I think we can all agree that 2020 has been an odd year for the smartphone industry, but if you're OnePlus, things couldn't be going any better. The company hit things out of the ballpark earlier in the year with the release of its OnePlus 8 series, OnePlus 8 and the OnePlus 8 Pro, and then followed that up with an astounding mid-range device with the OnePlus Nord. And now in the third quarter or fourth quarter of 2020, they gave us this, the OnePlus 8T. And if you simply look at it in a vacuum, it's an outstanding device. But based off of how OnePlus has delivered its other devices, this phone is a little bit more complicated than it should be, and a lot more complicated than the T series that OnePlus has launched in years past. I'm Nick Gray, and this is my review of the OnePlus 8T. I'm going to kick things off with talking about the performance of this device. And if you've used a OnePlus device from earlier this year, the OnePlus 8 or the OnePlus 8 Pro, things are going to be pretty similar here. This phone is packing a Qualcomm Snapdragon 865 chipset with 12 gigabytes of RAM here in the US. Though you can pick it up over in Europe with only 8 gigabytes of RAM, which comes in a little bit cheaper as well when compared to the US variant. As far as the performance that delivers, it's absolutely phenomenal. There's really nothing that this phone can't do. If you're into gaming or simply love multitasking, the OnePlus 8T is going to deliver a phenomenal experience there for you. That being said, it could have been just a little bit quicker and more powerful if they would have chosen the Snapdragon 865 Plus chipset that's used in the Galaxy Note 20 Ultra and a couple other gaming specific devices. But the reason for that was that they didn't want the price of this phone to bump up against that of the OnePlus 8 Pro and cannibalize the sales of that device either. Now, the OnePlus 8T may not have a performance advantage over the OnePlus 8 or the OnePlus 8 Pro, but it does have the advantage when it comes to battery life and charging speeds. This phone has a 4,500 milliamp hour cell on the inside that's actually split between two different cells that are sitting side by side. And the reason for that is OnePlus has added 65 watt charging that can take the phone from 0 to 100% in 49 minutes flat. And I've tried this out multiple times, and honestly, it's hit that number every single time. Now, the reason for the two cells, it's because they're using kind of the same logic behind it that Tesla uses on its car batteries, allowing multiple cells to absorb more power at the same time rather than trying to push all that power into a single cell. This allows the phone to stay cooler while it's charging, and I really haven't noticed it heating up that much when it's sitting there on the charger and it's pushing those 65 watts to the phone. That being said, the real advantage here would have been adding wireless charging to this phone like the OnePlus 8 Pro does have. I honestly think that wireless charging is a better feature to have rather than fast charging, especially because OnePlus's fast charging is ahead of the curve already when compared to most other devices that are on the market. As far as battery longevity goes, you're going to be able to get between 8 and 9 hours of screen on time between charges on this device in a long work day. But if you're not pushing the phone too hard, you can actually make it to a day and a half on a single charge without even breaking a sweat. I don't think anybody's going to be surprised to hear that the OnePlus 8T has an absolutely gorgeous display. What you're looking at right here is a 6.55-inch Full HD Plus AMOLED panel with a 120 Hz refresh rate and 240 Hz touch sampling. Honestly, it is extremely responsive, and compared to other devices that are on the market within the same price category that have 60 or even just 90 Hz refresh rates, you can honestly really tell the difference here. But the specs here may seem similar to what we got on the OnePlus 8, but the real difference here is the fact that we are now getting a flat panel rather than one with a curved edge, as we saw on the OnePlus 8 that goes over the edge of the phone. A flat panel may not be as aesthetically pleasing as a curved one, making the phone look just a little bit larger and a little bit more boxier. But if I have the option to choose between the two, the flat panel will always be my choice. The reason for this is that you get less glare on the screen at the top and the bottom when holding the phone horizontally when you're watching video. But also you get a lot few mistaps on the screen while typing, since you don't have to deal with edge detection software that usually doesn't get it right. While there are a lot of positives about this device, the cameras on the OnePlus 8T really aren't a huge improvement or even a noticeable improvement over the OnePlus 8. Like that device, you also get a 48 megapixel main sensor, a 16 megapixel ultra wide camera on this device, a 5 megapixel macro camera, which they say is a huge improvement over the 2 megapixel macro camera that we got on the 8. The one major change though is that they've included a 2 megapixel monochrome sensor, similar to what we saw on Huawei devices a couple years back. Now, the monochrome sensor is intended to pull in more light into the images that you take on this device, so there are some improvements in the dark shadows within shots or even with low light reproduction with this camera. But honestly, if you're doing one-to-one comparisons with the OnePlus 8 and this phone costing $50 more, you're not really getting $50 more in camera performance here. The last major thing I want to point out is the phone's price, $750 US. Now, if you're simply looking at the hardware and what you get for your money, the OnePlus 8T definitely delivers great value. But then you start comparing it to what else is currently available from OnePlus with the 8 and the 8 Pro. Both of those devices have been on sale with a $100 discount for over a month now, and those sales are probably going to be continuing throughout the year and into the holiday season, making the OnePlus 8 Pro $50 more than this device and the OnePlus 8 $150 cheaper. Now, if you're on a budget, the OnePlus 8 is definitely a much better buy considering what you're getting. The only real difference between these two devices is really, the noticeable difference between these two devices is really only going to be the battery performance. But if you want a premium device, honestly, you should skip this and spend the extra $50 for the OnePlus 8 Pro for a much better camera system, a much better display with a Quad HD Plus resolution, even maintaining that 120 Hz refresh rate. Honestly, the OnePlus 8T is a lot more confusing than the T series devices that OnePlus has released in years past. Last year, we didn't get a standard OnePlus 7. We only got the 7 Pro here in the US. So the 7T was a more affordable version with a couple tweaks that honestly made it a better phone than the 8 Pro. But with this phone here this year, it might have a couple improvements over the OnePlus 8. But for the amount of money that OnePlus is charging for the 8T here in 2020, I honestly don't think it's worth the price. And that's going to do it for my review of this device. Let me know in the comments whether or not you're going to be spending your hard-earned cash on this device or if you're going to be picking up another device this year. I do have a handful of camera comparisons with the OnePlus 8T and a lot of other devices that have launched in the second half of 2020. So make sure you check out the channel and see how this device's cameras stack up to the competition. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll catch you in the next one.